Hey Tess, can you hear me? I cannot hear you.
Because I was muted, like,
No.
you know, it's Monday, still not awake and functional
Okay.
yet, clearly.
Can I try? I'm going to share my screen really quick and then unshare it just to make sure I'm good.
Yep.
Okay, good. Perfect. Yay. Okay, I think I'm good.
Wonderful. Let me just quickly. Oh my gosh. What? Okay. One sec. Let me just Slack Riley. All right. Riley is just finishing up a call. He'll be here at the top of the hour. And then we'll get started probably, Sarah, at like 03. I'll do like a little intro and then I'll hand it off to both you and Riley. I'll go on mute and probably turn my camera off and just let you two have your conversation. I'll be in the chat making sure if there is anything that comes up that I can, assist and keep those conversations moving. If I need to, which I don't usually, I'll like hop in and be like, oh, this question is super relevant. Don't miss this. But otherwise, you usually rarely hear from me or see me. Okay, cool. Then otherwise, Sarah, you're good. If you want to get water, take a little breather before we get started, feel free. You don't have to be back until the top of the hour.
That's good. Thank you.
No problem. Hi, everybody. Welcome on in. I know we've got a couple folks already joining us, so I wanted to hop on and welcome everybody. Hey, Nate, good morning. I love doing events actually on a Monday. It's such a nice way to start the week because you feel like you really have to focus on something purposeful first thing on a Monday morning. You're getting into the routine right away. No dilly-dallying, no checking the news while you're also checking your email kind of thing. And it's really, I think it's going to set everybody else up as well for a great week. So I'm really excited for today's event with Sarah. We'll give everybody a couple more minutes. I think what we'll do is probably get going more at the top of the hour. I will do a little bit of an intro and then I'll hand over to Sarah and Riley to take it away. And I'm so excited for today's event. Seriously, it's going to be fantastic. Ooh, I love this. Hi, Arnie. Oh my gosh, welcome. We have so many people already. I love this. And I love that everybody is early too. I'm of the belief early bird catches the worm. I'm early to everything. You will never see me late for one thing, except, and I hate to say this, I missed a flight last weekend, and it was probably the single most devastating thing I've ever had happen to me as somebody who is chronically on time, if not early. So it was pretty devastating. But when you're traveling with a toddler, you never know what your schedule is going to be. You can't have a schedule. And it was also a 6 a.m. flight. So we cut it close and it did not pay off. Unfortunately, we had to end up getting a different flight. Oh, Sarah, I literally cried. It was very embarrassing. I cried entirely. I felt so bad for missing the flight. Yeah. Nate, I mean, you're operating with 4 times the amount of kids I have. I've only got one. So I think at that point, yeah, it's just like time is out the window. Everybody's on a different schedule. There's no, you're herding cats, right? That's what it's called. All right. Well, welcome on in, everybody. I know we've still got folks joining us, but I wanted to first formally welcome everybody to today's coffee chat. Today is our 5th episode of Coffee Chats, which is incredibly exciting. I am so glad to hear that I'm so glad to hear that we have so many folks in the room who are so excited to hear from our speaker today, Sarah. Sarah Measels is one of our community leaders for Houston. She is also a extremely prolific community member of the forum. And so you probably see her often being someone who is happy to hop on a call, walk folks through what she's already done and how she's learned how to leverage Procore. And so really what we've seen Sarah do on a daily basis in the community, we are bringing that to you today. So when it comes to what we're going to be learning today, Sarah has really had to make the most out of learning for the first time and doing all those things first. So that means breaking things. That means having to write all those standard operating procedures and come up with those documents. That means sharing those documents out, training folks on them, making sure that everybody is actually adopting them. It is an uphill battle, as I'm sure almost every single one of you on this call know. And so what we're going to talk about is making that uphill battle less of a battle and more of a win. So really being able to leverage the tools that you can get from our Procore community and especially this event to make sure that you can get that adoption for your teams much more easily. You're having to swim upstream less. And just like traveling with the toddler, you're having to herd cats a little bit less than normal. So that's our hope for everybody today. And that's the goal. So what I'd love to do now is to formally introduce Sarah to the stage, as well as Riley. Riley Hunt is our SPC at Procore. Riley is well known in the Procore space for being the forerunner for digital adoption, technical adoption, and making sure that we're really seeing Procore be part of your team structure. So welcome, Sarah. Welcome, Riley. I'm going to hand it over to you both to get us started.
Hi, Tess. Hi, everybody. Hi, Riley.
Hey, good morning. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
So to give a little background on myself, and then I think Riley, maybe a little background on you as well. So I've been in the construction industry for about 12 years now. And as a part of that, I've written standard operating procedures for 2 different construction companies. So that's what's got me into this experience. And this has become a topic that I've become very passionate about in that time. So I'm excited about today. But Riley, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about yourself first.
Sure, yeah. So I'm here with Procore as part of the professional services team. I work with customers, general contractors, and owners primarily to help get better adoption in their business of Procore and also help with change management, rolling out new processes or procedures, getting buy-in on new processes, sort of all the above, you name it, training, kind of industry best practice. So happy to be here. Looking forward to this conversation.
Cool. So to just kind of jump in, the standard operating procedures has been something that came up when I was at my previous company. We implemented Procore while I was working there, and as a result, we needed to redo quite a few of our procedures because we were changing systems. So during that time, I was a project coordinator for a general contractor. So I did a lot of like APM project coordinator style work. But I began slowly creating these processes while I was doing my regular job and training other people on how to use them within Procore. Just because I naturally became good at using Procore, I picked it up quickly, and I was able to help others pick up Procore as well. So eventually that turned into a full-time position where I was no longer working on projects as a project coordinator, but I became our full-time Procore administrator for the company and then began writing those procedures. So I thought we could talk a little bit about when that comes about, if your company is requiring or asking you or someone in the company to create SOPs, and why that question usually comes about, and the things that I've experienced. And then we could talk through how I created those at the 2 companies I've been with now doing that work, and then how Procore has been integrated with all of that. And then on top of creating the procedures themselves, I'm sure many of you know change is tough, but change in construction is really tough because a lot of these people have been doing their job the same way for many, many years, and they don't want to do the change. They don't enjoy the change. It's scary. It's uncomfortable. So I figured out along the way a few tips and tricks that can make helping people through that change a little easier as well. So
yeah, that sounds great. I
go
was just
ahead.
going to say, it might be nice to kind of take us back a little bit to when you first got introduced to Procore and found yourself sort of in that administrator role. How did you go about just learning the basics, understanding the foundation of Procore, sort of what tools you had access to, how permissions work? Like, take us through that journey a little bit.
Sure. So when we first rolled out Procore at the company I was with, I quickly went through all of the Procore certifications, and those really helped me understand the foundation of Procore for sure. But then after that, it really was a lot of just my own trial and error, having my own test projects, spending the time testing things out, and getting to know how the system worked and really understanding what could be done. And then as I transitioned into the Procore administrator role for the company, then I took all of those admin courses in the Procore certifications. Those really helped with like the permission templates and stuff like that. But what really helped me is I had an understanding of the construction project as a whole and what we needed. And then those certifications giving me the foundation of how Procore works, I was able to see, I know what our end result should be, and I was able to see how Procore could get us there. So as I moved into the Procore administrator role, there were some pieces of other roles like superintendent roles or project executive roles that I didn't know everything about because I wasn't doing those jobs. So what I did is I invited myself to a lot of meetings where all I did was just listen. I had no input in the meetings because it wasn't my role that I was performing, but it helped me just absorb information and the needs that other people had. And using my Procore knowledge while I was listening to those discussions really helped me see where we could solve problems in the background and using Procore to fix those issues for people. So as I transitioned into the kind of more administrative role and needing to be able to support everyone, not just my fellow project coordinators, those meetings helped me understand each role and what their needs were.
When you think back to when you were learning Procore and you're trying to understand how other folks are using Procore, what other roles were affected at the company through Procore, I guess, why is it important, or when did you realize it was important that SOPs for your company are important? Like, why not just have everyone take the Procore certifications? Why do you think there's a need for SOPs within a company?
So it's definitely the Procore certifications help you understand the foundations of Procore and the different terminology that people will use throughout Procore. But the SOPs became obvious when the Procore certifications will tell you how the submittals tool works or how the RFIs tool works, but they don't tell you what ABC's company requirement is for how to use that tool within Procore. There are so many different ways that you can use each one of these tools and different things that different companies might handle in a different way or choose to handle in a different way. So the Procore certifications were not enough they were not enough to show what we wanted to require. They were a great way to show here's what's available to us. But the SOPs really were required to show here's what's available and here's what we need. A great example is if you're using the Procore Financials tool and you're integrating it with whatever accounting system you use, there's going to be certain dates every month that the accounting team is going to perform their draw request for the project, and things will need to be done in Procore, like change orders written or anything like that before that date happens. Well, Procore can't provide any information for you on that because that's a company level decision. So writing an SOP that says your change orders have to be done in Procore by the 5th day of the month so that the accounting team can process their draws by the 10th day of the month, those kind of things you really need SOPs for.
When did whether it was at the previous company or the company I now, I guess, talk to us a little about the existing SOPs that either were created before you got there, or like what type of standard procedures were in place when you assumed this role, and then what sort of standard procedures or how did you identify what needed to be standardized?
So at both of the companies I've been with, there were no SOPs really at all. I think it's pretty common among general contractors to be a little bit behind the ball on organizing and procedures for specifically technologies that they're using. The company I'm with now, they were already a Procore customer when I joined about 2 years ago, but they were not using Procore efficiently. So they created the role that I have now for the first time because they knew they needed to be using Procore more efficiently. But what they did have was on their, company server, they had different PDF or Word document files here and there for specific things. Maybe they had a memo that somebody had published for accounting dates, like I mentioned earlier. And then maybe somewhere else they had a memo that talked about, who's required to approve certain change orders or things, but nothing was in one consolidated area and not in one consolidated document for sure. And then there were no procedures written for what we required to be done within Procore. Every project was different based on, how we handled RFIs or submittals or drawings. They were all different. So they recognized the need, especially at the executive level, to have everything standardized so that the executives could clearly access Procore and understand where to find what they needed and be able to find that information, because every team is using it the same way.
And so when you started uncovering some of this, how did you prioritize, or how did you decide on what you should focus on for standardizing?
Yeah, that is a huge topic because, as any of you know, there's so much that can be done in Procore, and there's so many different tasks involved in a construction project. So when I came to the company I'm with now, I created a list. Honestly, I ended up with a kind of a table of contents for what I wanted my entire SOPs to be. And then I chose how to attack that table of contents. And you definitely would need to discuss it with your leaders in your organization on what their priorities are, so that you can make sure you're aligned with the priorities of the leaders in your organization. So they probably have a couple of urgent ones. But really after that, when I had my choice, I chose the low-hanging fruit. So one of the first things that I attacked when I was here was daily logs. We were not using daily logs efficiently in Procore. Every project was different. So I knew that was an easy one that people would clearly be able to understand easily and see the value in regulating daily logs. I didn't have to do much to customize it. The daily logs tool in Procore is really great. So all I did was write a quick SOP saying this is required every day, this is who's required to do it, and this is when it's required to be done. And I distributed it to the team. I did a quick training on how to do the daily logs, just in case anyone felt like they didn't know how to do it. And then what really made that specific one successful when I rolled it out was I published a list to everyone on the construction team of who had completed their daily logs and who hadn't. Every month there was a percentage-based report. This team completed 100% of their daily logs. This team completed 75%. And as soon as I published that list, it became a competition. Everyone, I did mine, I just didn't mark them complete, or different things here and there. And with the next month, by the second time I published that report, we were at 100% success. But so in terms of, to get back to the question, deciding the urgency, I received some of my urgency from leadership, and then I chose on the easier items to implement. And I rolled out a new tool, a new kind of process once a month for the first 10 months that I was here. Every single month, I was rolling out something new. I initiated a monthly training, one for our superintendents and one for our project managers. They were separate so that I could train them on separate things if I needed to. And then with that, I would have maybe 1 month was a big change, like financials or submittals. And then the next month would be an easy change, so that it was a little bit easier to digest for the team, because that's a lot of change to have something new every month that affects your everyday life.
Yeah, that's great. If we could go back, maybe kind of zoom out for a second, what What were some of the reasons why the company you work for now thought it was important not only to invest in you, but to invest in someone overseeing the standardization of Procore? Like, what are some of the things going on in your business now that necessitate this standardization effort?
So I have a couple of things. The first one just being I am in the multifamily industry where I am now, and they were anticipating quite a bit of growth. I've been here for 2 years now, and our growth plan just for our own company over the next 3 years is huge. They're planning to triple their number of projects that they're doing every year. And they knew that they needed to prepare for that growth to be able to complete their job successfully, uh, because they would be having to hire a significant number of new team members to perform those projects. And we would need to be training those team members for every new project that we have. But then in addition, taking advantage of this downtime to be able to standardize some of those processes so that when we have that growth, we have good, reliable data that we can report on throughout that time. Some of the things that they were experiencing before I started, and still some now, is unreliable data. They had people were not all reporting their project financials in the same way. So sometimes the numbers would be skewed unintentionally, and then they would find out at the end of the project that they had some huge shortage somewhere that they never accounted for because they misinterpreted things here or there. They had the same thing happening with project schedules. The schedules were not being managed efficiently. So all of those inefficiencies were causing the general contractor of my company. We're an owner, developer, contractor, all in one. So the general contractor still has to report to ownership on our projects, and they were not able to provide reliable information to ownership on a regular basis. And that was extremely frustrating to the ownership. They felt like they couldn't trust what they were getting from the general contracting team. And as a result, projects were losing money or finishing late and behind schedule and delivering late. And we also do student housing. And so if any of you who perform student housing know, delivering late on a student housing project is just completely unacceptable and nightmare. And it turns into hosting students in a hotel at the beginning of their school year, which is just unheard of. So those were their reasons for needing to hire someone in this position. In addition to, Procore is a huge investment for any general contractor. So they wanted to be able to use that investment well and efficiently so that, you can go out and buy tons of different solutions for individual problems, but what could Procore have solved for us without having to spend the additional funds? So that's also a pretty big part of my job. I'm sorry, I see a couple of questions coming in. I see one about how many employees we have. The owner developer company as a whole, we probably have about 500 employees, but just the general contractor piece of the company that I work for, we have about 80 employees. If that helps you with the size of our company and what we experience.
Yeah, and I think there's another one about just some of those inefficiencies that your company was able to identify and then how you address those. You had mentioned one around daily logs, about change order management, and some other risky activities. Is there sort of a way that you all have set up now to identify things that need to be fixed or that are lagging?
We're better at having regular meetings now with leadership in the company. So different departments within the company are able to, even though we're a nationwide company, our leadership is local. We're all here in the same office. So we're able to meet together on a regular basis, and they can daylight concerns or questions that they have. But things that are trackable within Procore, I have slowly started to set up my own kind of reports that throw up red flags for us. I have some automated reports that I've set up that tell me if somebody's not completing their daily logs, or if there is, if somebody's schedule is falling behind. We have some different tools for that. So those are some of the things that we're still developing. When I started, and I talked about kind of that table of contents that I created from the very beginning of SOPs that I needed to create, I haven't finished attacking all of those SOPs yet. So once I finish some of those, I'll be able to go and kind of complete a reevaluation on where we are internally, on how those things are going, how our usage of Procore has gone up and gone up on different specific tools. And then I'll be able to kind of go back and honestly probably start over on, okay, we talked about daily logs 2 years ago. How is it going? Are we successful? Do we need to make some changes? And then go from there. A big thing that I like to preach about my SOPs is they are always changing. When I implement a new process, I don't claim that it's always the best thing. There might be something that we all find out together along the way that can be tweaked to make it even more efficient. So I encourage the team who is using the process that I'm implementing to provide me feedback, so that I can use that feedback to make any changes that might need to be made along the way.
Yeah, that's great. So we've talked a lot about the SOP side of things and how you're documenting certain processes or outlining something that needs to be implemented. Can we, I don't know if you have an SOP that you'd be willing to share. And if you do, and if you don't, we can look at the end, maybe give you some time to pull it up. But this might be a good time to just kind of show an example of what you're working with and how you're formatting things.
Yeah, I saw some of the requests too. I'd love to share some. I'll find a good one for you. And one thing as I'm bringing this up that I'd love to kind of point out and discuss is, when I created these SOPs for the first time, we hired a technical writer to put together the Word template for us, and they trained me on how to do technical writing. Even though it's not something you might think that you would need or want, it was so helpful for me in understanding how to put together a document like this. Because if you think about it, this can become a very long document. The first one that I ever wrote was only for a project coordinator role at that company that I was working for. And that one piece of it was over 150 pages long. Putting together a document like that needs to be very well organized and clearly put together in order to be effective. And the technical writers really helped shape those things for me and help me understand what would work and what wouldn't work in a document. And from then, they gave me the Word template. So all of my SOPs always look the same. People know what to expect from me. If they know that I've written it, they understand my flow and how the documents should be put together. And that's kind of my preface to what I will show you, but I do have it for you now. So one thing I will say is I am always trying to write my SOPs no higher than a 6th grade reading level. And that's not to insult anyone. It's simply to make it easy to understand. Anything with any of these training materials, it has to be easy to find and easy to understand. So the more clear and concise you can be with your language and the words that you're using, the more possible it is that people will actually use it and go to it when they need it. So I try to keep my kind of like paragraph writing as minimal as possible and really focus on the step-by-step for my SOPs. So this is a step-by-step that tells me how to get somewhere and how to navigate that tool. Procore has Procore Training Center, and they have quite a few articles that are available for just the general use of Procore tools. So I try not to do too many screenshots of Procore itself if I don't need to, because as all of you know, anytime Procore changes something like that, then I would need to be updating my screenshots. So I will, if I see something that is just very straightforward on, we've made no kind of our own tweaks on any of the Procore uses. Instead of putting the screenshots, what I'll say is here's a link to the Procore's article on how to use submittals. And then that way, when Procore updates their article, it also updates what my users are seeing. And then the very specific items that we have, maybe it's like, this is a screenshot of something from our servers, or it's a screenshot of something that we have really kind of customized within Procore, then I'll put a screenshot of those things. But I like to do, if you look at the layout of these documents, I try to break up the text so that there's, interesting things that will keep people engaged so that it's not just one really long, boring paragraph. And then the other piece of it is at the beginning in my table of contents, you can click on any of those items and it will take you to that item within the PDF document. So this helps people find what they're looking for more clearly. And even to the point of, I take very great care into what I am naming the headings within the document so that people can quickly find what they're looking for. I try to think of what the user is going to, the question the user is going to ask when I type these up. Okay, I need to add drawings to my project. So here I can quickly find adding drawings to your project. And those things are very helpful when you're putting the SOPs together. But one of my other big things is this document, this one is 72 pages long. Some people will see that and get overwhelmed and never open that document again. Some people love this. I love this document, clearly, because I wrote it. But different users learn in different ways. So in addition to my SOPs document, that is like the Bible, I also will create short training videos of each of these things. So maybe somebody learns more visually and they want to see a video of me performing that task. I'll make the videos available to them as well. And so then they can choose. But I make sure that the video and what I'm doing in the video matches what is done here in the PDF. And then when I'm rolling something out for the first time, I'll also perform a live training, kind of like our video here, where I train the team members and I train exactly what's written in the PDF, exactly what's done on the video, and I'll record the training in case anyone wants to go back and watch the training. And then they can interact and ask questions if they want as well. So making the SOPs available to people in multiple formats will make it more successful across the board for the different types of learners.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So we've talked a lot about the SOP itself and the concept of an SOP, but I think a big part of this too, and love to hear your experience, is the change management that goes along with implementing a standard operating procedure or just a new procedure in general. So you had mentioned a few minutes ago about how when you first got into this role, you were basically rolling out something new once a month. I guess take us through that journey of when you first started implementing change, the resistance you met or didn't meet, some of the lessons you've learned, and how you're doing things differently maybe now than when you first started.
Yeah, so when I first joined TDC, I put together a schedule that I provided to my leaders on the changes that I wanted to implement. And it was that monthly change of these are the different tasks I want to approach. I would create my SOPs, And from there, I implemented the monthly training for my project managers and my superintendents, and I began rolling out the training. Of course, different people will have resistance to change. I implemented policies where this is a required change that you must perform, and I received backup from the leaders on those policies that we implemented. If you do not have buy-in and backing from the top leaders in the company, then your change probably will not be successful. So before I ever implemented any kind of policy or change, I made sure that I had the buy-in from the leaders who would be enforcing that change. Because even though I am the enforcer, at the end of the day, I'm not the one that's talking to them every single day on their day-to-day job. It's still from their managers. So make sure you have kind of behind the scenes, your buy-in from your executives. But then I would also try to get buy-in from key team members that I knew had a lot of pull and sway with the others. So if I had a superintendent who had been with the company for 20 years, everybody trusted him, everybody went to him for advice, I tried to make sure that I also had his input and buy-in on the process. So when I was writing my SOPs for how we handle RFIs in Procore, I got feedback from those champions. Thank you, Amy, for champions. That is the word I was looking for. I would get input from the champions that I knew I wanted input from on each of the different roles: project manager, superintendent, project coordinator, project executives. And I used their input when I was writing the SOPs. So then they feel like they have had a part in creating that procedure. So of course they buy into it because it's their opinion and what they wanted. And then I would invite them to speak up in my trainings. I make a joke sometimes with some of the team members where I plan audience questions. If I'm rolling out a procedure and I know that Alex, the superintendent, had a really great experience with this procedure, then I'll tell him, hey, Alex, when I talk about XYZ thing, can you chime in with a question or a comment? And then I'm not the only person talking on the trainings, which can get dull. But then they're also hearing from one of their peers on how it worked for them and how it was successful. And it was a real thing that happened. Those are just pure gold. If you can have one of those experiences and have someone talking about that on the training, it helps so much with buy-in, because no matter how smart I might think that I am or feel like I am, or I know the topic, hearing it from one of their direct peers is going to have much more impact than hearing it from me, always. So those kind of help make the change a little bit easier for people. But even from that, when you have your people who are resistant to change, I check in on them. You know, I send them a quick email, or I take a look at what they've been doing in Procore on their project and see if I can provide any advice. You know, hey, Mr. Superintendent, I noticed you were doing this thing this way. If you do it this way, it'll be significantly faster and it'll save you 20 minutes every day. If you give them something specific like that and you can get them to try it and they can see that it will work, you will have their buy-in on that, and you'll have their buy-in on future processes because they trust you. So I work really hard to get those trust from those people, especially the ones that I know are resistant to change.
Yeah, that's great. Maybe we can go into that a little further and expand on that. How do you handle, or have you experienced users or different employees, different roles within the company that are a little slower to move to these new processes or procedures? Like, how do you make yourself available, or how do you make it as easy as possible for those that are more resistant to change in the field?
Yeah, I think a big piece of that is honestly just making sure you're available. And I understand that it's tough for someone who maybe their company doesn't have a full-time role like my role is that I have. But a big chunk of my job description is to be available when people need help. So as soon as I started to get buy-in and trust from some of these guys, um, they started calling me or sending me a message on Teams when they had questions. And what I found is the more often I'm available at that exact moment that somebody asks me a question where I'm actually able to help them, the more successful I am with getting to them. So I try to keep my meetings as minimal as possible, which is tough. You know, I go through phases where I have meetings all week long, or phases where I don't have very many meetings at all. So as often as I possibly can, if I receive a call, an email, or a text with a question, I drop what I'm doing to answer that question. And it's just, it makes it tough on whoever those people are that are leading this change. But the more times you can answer that question right away, the more success you're going to have. And I try to do a good job of setting expectations if I can't answer that question right away. So I do a lot of setting up my own expectations. If somebody asks me a question and I know I can't get to it right away, I'll respond immediately and say, "Hey, I'm in a meeting, but I'll answer this for you before I leave today," or I'll have a call set up for you tomorrow. And then I don't miss those deadlines that I gave myself ever. I do not miss deadlines. But I make sure that the deadlines I create for myself, I know that they're attainable. You've got to be real with yourself on setting those expectations and making sure that you're not going to disappoint the person you're setting up those deadlines for, so that again they can continue to trust you. Okay, Sarah said she's going to have this for me by the end of the day tomorrow. She always does, so I'm going to leave her alone until tomorrow. Or if they don't trust you, then they're going to keep asking you until they get their answer, because they know that you might forget about it or this or that. So the more trust you build, the more they're going to trust to come to you with more questions in the future.
So that's great. How do you balance being a resource for the different project teams, the company processes at large, the standardization, and the support that comes up, day to day with folks using Procore? Do you push people to use Procore support? Are you trying to be frontline support as well, or like, how do you make the differentiation so you can be effective in your role?
I definitely try to push people to Procore support. If it's an easy question that I know Procore support can answer, I direct them to Procore support. If they're asking me a question that is in my SOPs that I've created, and I know it's in there, I'll direct them to the SOPs. That's another way to ensure that people are, I try to get them in the habit of going to the SOPs before they come to me, because that's why I created them, so that they don't have to be dependent on me. At the end of the day, me being available to answer questions as soon as they come in is very helpful, but I need them to be able to find out how to answer those questions on their own. So as often as I can get them to the SOPs first, so that they don't even have to ask me a question, I consider that a huge success. But it's a pretty tough topic. But that goes back to making them easily accessible so that people will remember to use them. And then Procore Chat is a huge one. I try to get them to Procore Chat. And then sometimes they might ask me questions that I don't necessarily know the answer to, but I know one of their peers might know the answer to. I might direct them to one of my champions. If it's a superintendent asking me a superintendent question and I don't fully know exactly how they should respond, I'll send them to another superintendent. and I let that person know, like, hey, I'd love to have you help so-and-so with this one question, and I'd love to hear how you answered it for them. So I try to use my resources for who I know my champions are. But yes, teaching them to go find their own answers is definitely first, but it's a tough one. So a very close second is me answering them as much as I can.
Nice. What would you say is sort of next for you in this role and at your company? Do you all have certain initiatives you're looking to build on in 2025, or where do you go from here?
So I still have a couple of major topics in my SOPs that I haven't created yet. For us, a big one for me in 2025 is going to be creating a warranty process. We don't have much of a warranty process right now, and it's become more clear that we need one with the way the markets have changed. Um, we're an owner, developer, property manager who usually builds a project with the intent to immediately sell it. But the way things have changed, we've been holding on to properties a lot longer, which means we are personally dealing with the warranty claims that we didn't used to deal with. So that's a big one for us. But in terms of just kind of overall and not really like specific construction processes, I will probably begin helping out. I already have done some projects with teams in our company outside of just the general contractor company. So as a developer, GC, and property manager all under one umbrella, there's crossover between the development team and the general contracting team on when we pass off a project. When is the developer no longer responsible for the project and the contractor is? So I'll slowly start helping them also write their SOPs, because it will help the general contractor in the end. If the developer is standardizing the way they develop projects more clearly and more aligned with how the general contractor wants to perform the work, then our project will be set up for success from the beginning. So I'll probably start to help with those topics. Same thing I was doing for the construction team, just also within the property management company and the developer company, and then our kind of corporate overhead as well.
Got it. Is there anything you do in Procore now, anything creative around tools you use for certain processes, or anything that you thought would be cool to share with everyone on the call about how you handle certain things within Procore?
Yeah, so when I started writing these SOPs, especially the first time, when we were implementing Procore for the first time, it caused a lot of our procedures to change because we had to change to use Procore. And as a result, I needed to learn the different things in Procore. And honestly, that's where community helped a ton. Is we started finding unique ways to use Procore tools to solve the problems that we needed to solve. So if you think about it, if your company has asked you to write an SOP for something specific, it's probably because either you're hiring a ton of people, or maybe the process is broken somewhere along the way. And maybe they're asking you to write the SOP because it's broken and they know it, or they don't know that it's broken, but as you try to write it out, you realize very quickly that it's either broken or extremely inefficient. So I experienced that at both of these companies. As I was writing these processes, it was clear we haven't told anybody who's responsible for creating this change order in Procore. So, hey, leaders, we need to make that decision together. So over time, I started figuring out how Procore could help solve these different problems. And that's what brought me to Procore Community. Is there are so many people, as you can see from the chat, who are going through these same exact things all the time, over and over and over again. And other people have probably figured out how to solve these problems before I even knew that I had the problem. So Procore Community helped me find quite a few, but I think I have become a little bit of an expert on using Procore tools for maybe slightly not what they were made for. So I put together some examples of things we're using Procore for. We use the action plans tool for our own internal QA/QC plan, which that's part of what they made action plans for. That's not so unique. But within our QA/QC plan, we have partnered with our company who does our QA inspections. They go into Procore for us in our action plan, drop in their inspection report, create observations for items on that report that are, an item of concern or something like that. They create the observation as well in Procore for us so that we don't have to review the full inspection report and find the problems that they noted. In that same QA/QC plan, we use the inspections tool to perform our own internal inspections. So this one QA/QC action plan for the project hosts third-party inspection reports, internal inspections, and then we also use it for our owner representatives. Since we're an owner and GC together, our owner representatives do a monthly site visit, and we created an inspection for them every time they visit the job site to review and answer these questions when they visit the job site. So is it technically an inspection? Probably not, but it's a great way to use a checklist for that one person to complete every time they visit the job site. And all of those things can be found in one place, which is the action plan of Procore. We also use project roles. I've used this in the past. We hire the same subcontractors over and over again who maybe don't always perform the same work on a project. If you've got a contractor who does drywall, ceilings, and paint within their company, but maybe on this project, we only hired them for drywall. Or this other project, we hired them for all three. We use the project roles to differentiate so that the superintendents can understand when they're looking in Procore who they should be calling. So that's kind of hard to explain without showing you. So I will show you. So within Procore, I assigned roles, just like the roles that show up on your main homepage. A lot of people will say like project manager, superintendent. I created roles for the different trades that they would be performing. And when I added them to the project, I assigned them a role. And from there, I have this custom report created that only shows those roles that I want that are specific to trades. So this makes an easy contact list for my superintendents who might not know like who's doing the paint on this job, even though they're in the directory and I could tell them, go find this company in the directory. Are they doing the paint, the drywall, or the ceilings? I don't know unless I see the project role. So I use this one at my previous company. We actually don't use it where I am now. So I put together kind of a little sample so you could see it. That one I learned from someone else on Procore Community. That's a great example. I stole that idea from someone. It's definitely not my own, but it was extremely helpful at my last company. We also use correspondence. The correspondence tool is so amazing. I don't even touch everything that the correspondence tool could be used for. but I use it as a place for my teams to dump their lessons learned on projects. If you've ever had, most companies, I think, end up having a random lessons learned folder somewhere on their server or whatever they're using. And somebody might have added something to it 5 years ago and then never touched it again. But especially for us as developing these projects on our own, we share these lessons learned as they get created with our development team and our estimating team so that they don't make that mistake again. We're building this project right now, but we're estimating and bidding for 3 or 5 projects also right now that we want to start building next year, and we don't want to make this same mistake again. So these lessons learned, being able to capture them in Procore means then I can report on them and provide that report to whoever needs it. This has been huge for us. This is just one project, and they've got 30 lessons learned that they put here within Procore that I can share with whoever I need to as often as I need to. This one has been great. I think this came up in the chat a little earlier where I said I'm working on warranty processes. I'm working on creating warranties through correspondence so that our property management team can create warranty claims directly in Procore to notify our construction teams. So there's so many. I use so many like random Procore things. I feel like I'm going to so long.
No, I think this is great. We are coming up close to the hour, so I don't know if there were a couple other questions that you wanted to answer here.
I have not been able to keep up with them.
Yeah, no worries. Let me grab a couple for you here. This has been great. Something that Amanda brought up a few minutes ago was around delegation and who's responsible for Procore. So do you have any experience with that? If, say, superintendent's responsible for something, but they delegate to another user, or like, do you have pretty clear swim lanes for who's responsible for doing what and what can be delegated, or any experience you can share with us on that?
I think it's a very fine line. So the way I like to phrase most of it is, if you think about it, at the end of the day, there always needs to be one person. That doesn't mean that one person is responsible for every single thing all the time, but that one person is responsible for the success of that thing. So pretty often it comes down to either the project manager or the superintendent, depending on the type of task. And what I like to phrase it is, I'll say, the project manager is responsible for either the final sign off of this thing or the final success of this thing. However, they may delegate to a project engineer, APM, or so-and-so, to make it clear that the project manager does not have to be the only one doing this task. So yes, Mr. APM, you can help out with this thing, but the project manager still needs to take ownership of that task to make sure that their project is being performed successfully. But that's a really tough area to keep clear and straight. So as often as I can, if I can say the project manager is responsible for this or the superintendent is, I put that in there because I want them to know at the end of the day, you still need to own this. But owning this also is, you being able to delegate those things. I hope that answers it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, before we wrap up, do you feel like there's anything else you wanted to share that we didn't get to?
I could talk about this stuff forever. We touched most of the tasks of the things that I wanted to touch. I love talking about this subject, and Procore community has helped me host these kind of conversations all the time. So if you are in Procore community and ever want to see a certain thing or report or something that someone has come up with, I highly suggest just ask them if they want to have a meeting. I request those meetings and host those meetings all the time. And no matter what, I learn something new from those meetings every time. Even if it's me showing someone something I've put together, they always provide some kind of feedback or question that jumpstarts thoughts for me. And I just love having those meetings every time. They always make my day.
That's awesome too. Yeah, well, thank you so much, Sarah. You're a wealth of knowledge, and this has been really practical and useful for all of us. Quick plug for me and professional services here at Procore. I don't know if anyone on the call has ever worked with professional services at Procore. It is a service we offer, but folks on my team write SOPs for customers all day, every day. We can tailor them to your business processes. So if you're interested in that, reach out to your Procore point of contact and ask them about Procore SOPs and getting professional services involved. We can help with training, with advising on best practices, putting together documentation, hosting them in our training center. All of that's on the table.
Amazing. Thank you both so much. I have to say, this has been one of the most practical and worthwhile conversations. Sarah, I truly think we couldn't get to everything in even an extra hour. I know that we are running up against time. So what I can share is that we do have a group in the community forums that really is so that we can follow up with these kinds of conversations that we have in coffee chats, because they're meant to start to spur things for everybody. So check out that group, join it if you haven't joined it. We'll be there, and I'll also be sharing the recording out in that group as well as via email so that everyone will have this. I reckon this will likely spur a lot for you, Sarah. So everyone be nice to Sarah. Not too many questions at once in the community, please. But just a huge thank you. Sarah, you have been amazing, amazing, amazing today. This has been a fabulous presentation. And thank you to our wonderful virtual audience. I have to say, it's tough to sort of get a vibe from a virtual audience every time you do an event. But in this session, I truly haven't seen a better vibe like all year in our event. So it's just a testament, honestly, Sarah, to your wealth of knowledge and how amazing you are and what you've done for your company and the business. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I do have a question for myself. Will I be able to read this chat later on? I feel like I missed so many things.
Yes, I'll be able to download it for you.
Okay.
Don't worry.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
Bye.
Thank
Have a
you.
good
Bye.
one.
Bye.